Hi there. In a previous video I talked about how man's governance has attempted to supplant the Creator in order to place his own reality over the natural order, to make a man-made and imperfect heaven on earth, a heaven where there would be a few in positions of power and benevolence and a multitude to pray and be in service of the chosen. An imperfect man-made world is a reflection of a divine one, if you will, where there is ample room for those that decide themselves divine through the narrow measure of wealth or birth, and very little room for others who unknowingly built it and put it all together. In manufacturing of this utopia, previous governance has taken away the ability to hunt, fish, travel, and so on, unless a fee is paid in tribute. These things would be available to anyone who wished to do it in a natural order, but because some people got together and wrote that it was no longer possible, without paying a fee under threat of force, man's governance claimed the ability to supplant the natural order. Now you pay for a hunting license or a travel license, or need to pay for food items from the supermarket. We need to remember, though, that the natural world is still there. Man can't fully destroy it and claim it's all man-made, because he can't. Food is still grown and caught, minerals mined, and sunshine gives life from nature. All is taken from nature initially. But we find ourselves living in a man-made creation of office towers, legislation, oil dependency, arbitrary enforcement, work and taxation. All this has long past missed the mark of the promises it whispered into the ears of our forefathers. Agreements made by those now long since dead to others who now no longer exist on this plane of existence have, however, been carried over and added to on the assumption that the current generations also agree to not only the original contracts in the form of constitutions and laws, but also agree to any new amendments and legislations made without consultation. These assumptions are made even when the person may have no knowledge of what a constitution is or how the legislation works, because ignorance apparently is no excuse. Further to this, items of value once assumed to be owned, such as vehicles and homes, need to be registered and carry an ongoing fee or continual tax to enable it to be used. The same might be said of us, as we're all registered at birth, and from working age are taxed on both our work in the form of income tax, and again when we buy food to live, and everything in between, out of your already taxed income. The promises of a simple life with flying cars in the world of tomorrow have been pushed aside in favour of more taxation, more legislation, and the need for both parents now to go out to work to afford to live. Some might say we live like kings compared to our grandparents, but a counter-argument might well be that we're more slaves now than we were before, due to the very technology that promised more freedom, and we now live in someone else's proprietary world that seeks to profit from every piece of our data, DNA, facial features, shopping habits, and ultimately our very lives, all the while offering very little in return. If we think about it, we're subject to a holy trinity of sorts, but not a spiritual one that can be followed through choice. This trinity is compulsory and headed by the government. This entity, as the name implies, seeks to control your mind and uses an assumed authority to act as your godhead on earth, telling you who and what to believe and how they are always working in your best interests, while writing sweeping legislation when a few bad eggs make the news cycle. Next comes the legal system, and where the government seeks to control your mind, the law works to control your body, sending out uniformed Stanford experiments to use force and question you in a way another man wouldn't dare to do in any ordinary circumstance. These folks that claim to have power over you because someone wrote down that they had, get sent to enforce laws you had no say in. These entities also walk amongst us mere mortals to control our actions. They bar the way to areas that we're told we cannot go, enforce the dictates of the government, and make sure we go to court if needed, where we must answer to the Lord for our indiscretions as written by man. Of course, this Lord is in name only, being corporeal and unelected, but likes to pretend to be divine, as it may appear to some that this Lord is in many places at once, looking down from on high and dispensing judgments, while what's actually occurring is that a group that monopolizes money collection for trespassing the government's edicts pops on a wig to all look the same and appear to be in different places at the same time to dispense penance to the masses, much like you see Santa everywhere at Christmas. But of course, he's a little less penancy. The final part of the Trinity, having now covered mind and body, is the Spirit. This position, of course, goes to the Pope and the Vatican, and the least said about that, the better. So here we are. It seems that those that claim power over the multitude like to believe we're nothing but a zombie, an undead that walks the world. For our mind is outsourced to a government which was once a king or queen claiming a divine right to rule. Our body is now a body of law, being told where to go and what to do, and what we cannot do. And our souls or spirit are claimed to be under the auspices of the Vatican, with a pope that believes to have a divine claim to own the divine third of you. And all the while not one of the three have a legitimate claim at all. All three are man-made. None can prove their claim of divine right. But one thing is for sure, you didn't create them, and they never asked for your consent. So where do they get the power from? Or is it just the thread of force holding it all together? Do we live in a delusion and are so deluded ourselves that we would rather outsource our life to others in favour of little pieces of plastic or paper that are backed by these institutions and subsequently removed by them, so we have to wake up to another day ready to strive for more? A few billion individuals living on Earth, every one of us claimed in mind, body and spirit by a man-made entity. We live in an essentially enclosed environment where all men and women are claimed to be created free and equal. Yet you and your possessions are appropriated by these man-made entities if a tithe is not paid to them, with the backing of force by those claiming a right without proof. They make their own rules and laws for you to follow without individual full disclosure and consent. It's a farce. But right now, if all this wasn't bad enough, we have a new group claiming a higher right than the Trinity mentioned here. Another select group who are making their own promises, just like those before them. But now in some bizarre 1984 type doublethink, they're expecting you to own nothing and be happy. But as many have already asked, if you own nothing, that must mean someone is making a claim to own it all in order to rent it back to you. And if everything is rented to you and you own nothing, what happens if they decide not to offer the service to you any longer, or a glitch in the system means you can't eat today? And how exactly will you own nothing? Well, that might be achieved with a little bit of magic. Magic, true magic, if there is such a thing, is not mere illusion. It's the belief of making something happen at a distance through supernatural aid or force of will. Freemasons, Rosicrucians, the OTO, organised religion, in fact any so-called secret society, would be used to the idea of magic through all their ritual and hierarchy. You might even remember a book called The Secret that came out a long while ago now, but that was all about manifesting what you wanted and had some of these ideas. Magic can take on many forms: chanting, ritual, invocation, using charms and sigils, and it's said we all use it in one form or another. When asked on film to practice some magic by an interviewer, one practitioner said, "Sure. Oh, could you pass me that pen?" And upon receiving the pen, he said, "There you go. I needed the pen, I spoke the words, and it came to me." And to that I had to grin. I had to agree that we did all practice some kind of magic. But the repetition of chanting incantations and initiations has been modified and magnified manifold over the years by the likes of schooling indoctrination, newspaper print, and the ever-insidious television playing a part. Now, without even being there, we believe the claims in print or media. And just like that, without actually being where the action is, or being able to verify the information ourselves, we all reinforce a narrative around the water cooler the next day while adding to it with our own spin. It doesn't matter what your personal feelings are about the issue, just that you believe the narrative. Whether it's Martians starting a war of the worlds, a foreign power threatening borders, or the search for WMDs, if it's in the news and repeated on the hour, every hour, you can learn the words of the incantation yourself and pass them on to the uninitiated. And from the Trinity we might learn something new to believe, or a new legislation to combat something, or a long sentencing for some heinous deed. And if a certain feeling on the issue has to be encouraged, there might be a talking head who looks like they're in favour of the topic because of a very narrow point of view, but in reality They're a very carefully vetted doctor, lawyer, celebrity, or some other person who engenders trust in the viewer to help them believe the spin on the narrative. In the same way, we're going to be sold on this new heaven on earth by the people who we've never met, probably with a group of well-paid people nodding their heads behind the speaker. We might be told the old ways aren't working, and it's time to make a change. They'll use carefully crafted words and sentences that could be interpreted in either a positive or negative light, but not offer which way is the correct interpretation. And it's all to cast a spell to make you believe it's legitimate and for the best for everyone. And with dissenting and questioning voices essentially silenced through media, as many already are, those that want to speak out won't have anywhere to express their views. The world leaders will no doubt stress the debt they wallowed in and caused can't be repaid, and that all countries are bankrupt. Then the companies and billionaires that profited and consolidated in the bad times because of their exemptions and taxpayer bailouts will probably step forward to buy it all for cents on the dollar, just like the stock market in the 20s, and somehow own it all, because the land and all its assets are forfeit to the bailout that was offered from the goodness of their hearts. This New World Order is not a joke to them. In these magicians' minds, the world has to change, and they will make it change, for they believe in the mantra, as above, so below, and the age of Pisces is coming swiftly to a close, and a new age is dawning, and Aquarius is the new ruling house. Christian religion must be toppled, as the fish symbol and the originator being a fisher of men is now due for a makeover. God, as Christians understand it, needs to be removed so man can claim full ownership and mastership of all without the acknowledgement of anything above him, so no authority can be questioned. And the last rule to follow will probably be to give up all worldly possessions to be admitted to the new man-made heaven, because you can't take worldly possessions with you now, can you? And the new gods will admit you to the kingdom, as long as you're willing to hand over your soul and pray to them for the privilege. It'll be interesting to see who'll fill the shoes of the new Holy Trinity, because although the tip of the iceberg message of the old religions for the profane can be destroyed, the occult meanings will be kept and recycled into the new, with their meanings once again allegorically hidden from the general populace in the new doctrine. The men and women who'll claim to own our mind, body and spirit will chain all three to their new grindstone. They won't teach you these occult ideas that may make you equal, and once everyone has signed over to the new world, will absolutely not tolerate any useless eaters. Remember, though, that it may look like a new world, but the world has always been the same. It's the shaping of it by man that makes it look different, and it's always the design of those that crave power. And as the centre of power has moved from local towns to cities to states to countries, and now an attempt at a world centre, the voice of the individual has been diminished with each move, until the voice now is but a whisper that is largely ignored by government, and it will be dismissed as simple white noise to the likes of the new regime. Unfortunately, unless people realise they are the ones that have the real power through their own force of will, sheer numbers and refusal to be forced again into a world that's ruled by a select few, and unless they not only claim back their inalienable rights, but their self-governance, self-authority, and their very souls from those that assumed possession of them, well, if these things aren't done, it may well be a very short time now before the last thing seen before the cage door slams shut is another misdirection cast by a white glove holding a magic wand, and the last sound heard is that of a single uttered word to welcome the new illegitimate regime into being. Abracadabra.